Hello, everyone. This is Chala, CEO and founder of the Repositioning Expert. Welcome to another live Tuesday tea time session, another Tuesday, another tea time, and again, another hot beverage for me. We will just call it another protein drink. I am back and I'm talking about sales meetings. How many sales meetings do you come out of thinking, did that go well? Am I sure? Did we bomb this one? It's almost like a test, isn't it? And then you come out and you compare notes, just like when you used to in school. Let me take a sip. It's a little thick. I'm going to do it again. Sometimes the protein powder gets like clogged a little and then it rushes me. It's not good. So let me talk to you about sales meetings. These are like adrenaline pumping meetings where you prepare with all you've got, everything you've got. You're so excited. And then you go in and you're like nervous throughout. You feel like things are going well because people are just so nice. Let me tell you, I used to have sales meetings when I used to buy services from vendors when I worked for 18 years at Pepsi, Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay. And I don't know, maybe half my time was spent in vendor meetings because it was just, I was trying to find out, we were trying to find out about, especially during when we had, new contract changes or new projects going on. Easily half of my time was spent with, half of my career was spent with vendors. So how apt is it that now I help them get into meetings and actually close the meeting? So this one is about whether your sales meetings are working or not. And here are the 5 signs. So the first one is whether you've been able to get the right people in the room. So this is a huge way to tell if you've done the pre-work to actually get them in there. So first you have to have the specialty and the brand presence and the hook to have landed the meeting. And if it's a meeting with much lower managers where nobody really has any say, authority, they have no budget, you're just wasting your time and theirs pretty much. Unless it's like such a huge, pyramid that you have to keep climbing through multiple layers of people, in which case like you do those differently. But where you have to have a closing meeting is where you have to have the budget and the authority in the room. How do you get them in the room? There's multiple ways. So first of all, your job starts before you get into the room. So that's when you have to have the right marketing strategy, have the right messaging, have the right branding, that everything holds together wherever they met you, however you hook them into being interested in meeting with you. You already are some form of celebrity in their mind around this pain and the topic of their pain, that they're excited for it, that they're looking forward to what you all have to bring to the table in terms of what the solution is going to look like, what you think of their issue, and like what your take on as an expert in their field and in their pain. So these are some of the ways, like this is not a vendor sales pitch, you guys. This is like when you do the right marketing, people are already aware of you, interested in your solution, and interested and already respect you in what you do. Okay. So that's the way I want you to walk into rooms. And it doesn't matter if you're a sales rep for a company, your company and their brand should have already done the work and opened doors for you. And if it's not, then you need to talk to, I'm not saying that's a sales rep. Maybe the sales rep does have to, but somebody has to talk to the founder, the owner, the CEO to get their strategy, messaging, all of it all aligned and right and operating in the same, all the same pistons are firing at the same time, because you don't want to walk in with nobody knowing who you are, resenting the time that you're gonna take up, and they're just looking at their watches the whole time. So enough said about that, because like most of my career of 20 years was spent with vendor meetings. I'm telling you. I almost gave birth during one. I have a story about that. We'll talk about it later. But so the right people in the room. And once you've done the work before you go in of having the right authority and the right equity, the brand equity in the market, you are really able to ask. You say, who is going to be in this room that needs to be in this room? Who will be the decision makers that need to be in this room? Who will be making this decision for the purpose, for the purchase, and who needs to be there for this meeting? You literally ask for them to be there. And if they're not there, I've asked my clients not to go in. I've asked my clients never to pitch non-decision makers. I've asked them to decline, and I've asked them, and with, politely, of course, and by saying, the solutions, we co-create solutions with the people who are involved in making these decisions. So I wouldn't be able to give you any kind of a proposal or advice or even a price based on not being able to meet with the true decision makers of this purchase. So that's what you have to say, and politely decline and move on to someone who can actually view you as a partner, in a strategic partner in solving this problem. Okay. So that's number one, is have the right people in the room. If you don't, that's one of the signs that your sales meetings are not working, because you haven't done the right, whatever positioning, branding, whatever you needed to do, the messaging to be able to get the right people into that room. Okay. Number two is you're talking more than they are. So what does that mean? In coach school, so when I was in corporate, I decided to become a coach, and I took coach school, at Coach U, and there's like a million coaches right now, and I never even used my certification, but I became a certified coach. And one of the really useful things that we learned is listening and questioning. And the biggest thing about being a coach, and this is like a certified coach, is that you're only allowed to ask, you're only allowed to talk 20% of the time. And you're never allowed to tell people something. You're always you're being told to ask people. So it's the ask method versus the tell method. And you're only allowed to speak 20%, which means you have to listen for 80% of the time. So if if you're talking more than they are, that is not a good sign. Now you're going to say, but Chala, they invited us to do a presentation. That's fine. Stakes, when you go in, I know that everyone's all like looking at you to be the performer in these meetings, and that's fine. You can start with a small, 15-minute presentation. But what I like to do is I like to make it inclusive and interactive. So after I present one thing, and usually we present about a problem that a very similar company had, with the same problem, what we did and what the results were, and numeric hard results. And then I would turn it over to the decision makers in the room and say, does this sound like it would work for you? Like, constantly keep it going. And not only that, but after this 15 to 20 minute capability presentation, I usually have a 5 question methodology where we're actually asking them these very, very strategic 5 questions to get them to co-create the solution with us. So that's the way we do selling. But number 2 of the signs of why your sales meetings are not working, or that they're not working, is that you're talking way more than they are. Number 3 is there are no questions from the buyers. It's crickets. So let me tell you about this story. I was once hired to be a fly on the wall to shadow a pitch by vendors to Procter & Gamble buyers. And this was kind of like a competition. And I was meant to just witness, and then later to help the vendors with their pitches and with their approach. And this was for Latin America. And one of the vendors didn't even speak English. And she was asked the most number of questions. I mean, she could speak English, but it was very hard for her. And I don't know if she had an interpreter when she had to answer the questions, but how ironic that she was asked the most amount of questions. So, and here's why, and this is completely off topic, but the reason why is because she didn't speak any English, but she took the Procter & Gamble products and she found them on her country's Amazon site and showed why it wasn't selling as much as the next competitor on the same site. And that's what they did for a living. They were a digital marketing company. And she just showed like one versus the other. And it was like showing someone something is 10,000 times better than 10,000 words of how to describe it. So this woman didn't even have to speak English, is what I'm saying. But the big lesson here is that if it's crickets, nobody's asking anything. One, they've mentally checked out. Two, they're so bored, they have nothing to ask. Three, what you're presenting has nothing to do, no relevance to what they're doing, and they're just too polite to say anything about it. I was always, like kind of like a rebel and a rule breaker when I was presented. And also like I was just too jaded because I met with so many of them that if a vendor would waste my time and fill up all this time, because like you're scheduling time away from all the million things that you have to do, right? And if you don't get them done, you have to get them done on your own time. So if a vendor was wasting my time and I had no questions because what they were talking about was always about themselves, or it was always irrelevant to my business, my industry, my problems, the scope of my budget, I would say it. I would say, do you have anything to show us that has to do with XYZ? Do you have any idea what our issues are here at this brand or at this company or in this industry, right? And they'd be like deer in a headlight, right? It's just, and my bosses and their bosses up would always be too polite to say anything, and they'd always want to get out. But I would always push the vendors. And so like you can imagine, this is like the perfect job for me now, is where I'm coaching the actual vendors to what to say, what not to say, and what stupid things not to do. And this is part of the live that I'm doing here, is that one of the signs is really when they are not asking questions, that is not good. You have not jogged their interest, or piqued their interest, or you haven't jogged their minds or memory about how what you're talking about could apply to them. Okay. Number 4 sign that your sales meetings are not working is they won't let you set the next meeting or the next step. So one of the things that I train my clients who are doing sales meetings is you have to get a date to get a date. And part of the scripting of what we do of sales meetings, of part of the questions is, the last question is, do you think this will help you? Is this what you need, kind of thing. And they either say yes or they say no, and then we overcome that objection. And this all happens before talking about the price. And we always talk about the price in the first meeting. And that's why it's so critical that you have the decision makers and the budget people in the room at that time. And so when they're saying yes, hopefully you've overcome the objection and they're saying yes. And even further, when we co-create the solution together, which is really writing out a co-creative scope of work together by asking them certain questions live in the meeting, and then coming up with a price range based on what they're asking for, but really putting down the whole enchilada of what you think can be done to address the problem based on your past experience with similar clients. And hopefully you're a specialist in their industry, you're a specialist in their size, you're a specialist in their problem. So it's fairly easy for you to know what the scope of a range for a price is. So once you do that, then the question is this a fit for you? Which piece of this budget would you like to bite off right now? And what are the next steps? So these are some of the questions that I teach my clients to ask. But either way, no matter how you're asking it, if they're not willing to be pinned down to a next step and a date, then you've missed an objection. Now, they can say, we have to check with so-and-so, we have to check with multiple people's, we don't know our own schedules. That's great. But then that's when you get a date to get a date and say a reasonable time. Well, when will you know? Will you know in a week? Is it okay if I call you next Monday at noon? Get a date to get a date. If they will not be pinned down, most likely they are not sold. And that's another sign that your sales meetings are not working. Okay. So last but not least, of course, this is the obvious one. Your sales meetings are not working, of course, if you're not closing. Your close rate is very low. Now, I want to caution you with this. I've had clients that have come to me and said, my close rate is super high. And then we would look and we would see they were like underselling their services and the value that they were over delivering the value by like 10 times according to like when you compare it to their competitors. So if you're priced really low, you sell very fast and you sell a lot. But that's really not, I mean, unless that's your business, unless you're a Walmart, that's usually not what's who I work with, which are like B2B service-based businesses. They want higher price, higher value clients, and they're trying to make, they're trying to work less hours for more money, which is exactly what my the clients that I have, and that's exactly how I work as well, right? I have few clients and I work very few hours, but I charge a lot. So that's what's in store for you if you're able to learn how to position yourself, differentiate yourself, and message yourself properly. So then also, if you learn how to close in this way that I'm teaching you, then you learn how to close high value clients, much bigger contracts, and compress the timeline for corporate sales into, from 18 months to hopefully maybe 6 months or 4 months. And the close rate is really critical because your close rate will go down according to the size of the fish that you're trying to land or the contract. And as my clients always hire me to go higher, our close rates can go down, but but your profits are going up. So it doesn't mean that you're doing a bad job. It just means that you've changed your target. So the close rate is really like questionable in terms of an absolute measure of success. That's why I want to caution you, like if you have a really high success rate, meaning close rate, it could be that your prices are too low and maybe you can afford to take it up a notch. And if they're like too low, then you have to take a look at what am I doing wrong? Am I uncovering the urgency in the meeting? Am I talking about pricing in the meeting? Are the right people in the meeting? Am I saying too much? Am I not listening? Am I talking too much? Are they not asking questions? So all of these things. So think of all 5 things, 5 signs that your sales meetings are not working. And then look at redoing what you're doing so that even if you change one of the 5, you're going to have much better results and close rates. And that's what I want for you. So that's all for now. And I will see you next Tuesday. Take care.